Police officers, what's the dumbest thing you've ever seen a criminal do or say? These are my pants, but those are not my pockets. Can't make this shit up. OMG, lol. What did you say in response? I was so new at the time, I didn't have a witty response. I just chuckled and kept searching him. I think what he meant to say, everything in his pockets, cigarettes, ID, lighter, keys, were all his, but the baggie of meth was not. But who am I to make assumptions? The man said they weren't his pockets, so they weren't his pockets, lol. Friend's daughter and daughter's boyfriend get busted with a kilo of weed. Friend's daughter says, "Oh, we weren't going to smoke it, we were going to sell it." Lol, that's pretty dumb. A kilo would be a stretch for even Snoop Dogg to claim personal use. At that point doesn't really matter what she said. What the frick? I ordered an Xbox controller. The F. They sent me a kilo of weed instead of a kilo of Xbox controllers. DUI trial. Defendant chooses to represent herself. She tries to introduce evidence during the trial, but is quickly blocked by the prosecution. The judge, maybe taking pity on the flaming train wreck that was this woman's defense, asks to see the evidence. It was a receipt from the bar she left before I stopped her that showed that she purchased 2 large margaritas. Her whole defense was, I couldn't have been drunk after only 2 margaritas. She was found guilty. My initial reason for stopping her was that she drove down an embankment on the side of the road to get to a McDonald's drive-thru. Retired cop here. Boy do I have stories. One dumber move a guy did was he steals some poor girl's car. It was her first car. She worked full-time, was a sweet little thing, and we felt so bad. She was crushed. Also in the car for some reason was her cell phone. So a colleague who has the gift of talking shit really well calls the number. Dude answers. It goes a little something like this. Cop, mother trucker, you stole my girlfriend's car. Bad guy, bitch, I will F you up then. F your bitch. Cop, bring it, mother trucker. No cops, no friends, me and you. I'm at the Chevron on Main Street and 5th. Fussy, I'm calling your bitch ass out. Bad guy, bitch, I'm on my way. Click. Me. No effing way he's coming. Dude rounded the corner and pulls into the gas station. We hid our cars behind it, and then when he parked we boxed him in. He had a gun too. Effing idiot. On probation. Had a loaded gun. Came to us. Edit and news story by popular demand. A few questions. Yes, he showed up in the stolen car with a friggin' shaved key in the ignition. He used to steal it. Because people liked it so much, I talked to the original cop who has the gift of talking shit. He said a few months later in court, the guy claimed the gun was not his, as we found it under the driver's seat. He said it must be hers. So F up. But the jury didn't buy it. We saw him shoving something from his waist under his seat when he saw us. Also yes, the look on his face was classic. It went from I'm gonna kill this dude to the look a prey animal gets when it knows it's F. He was killed a few years later in a chase in another stolen car. Was ejected. DOA. News story. Okay, I will give you all another. This one was kinda circumstance that involved me. Lol. So working one busy Saturday night, there was a huge brawl with about 20 bros in front of a club. Yeah, no. Affliction shirts, tap out shirts and Monster Energy hats with flat bills galore. Lol. So we get there and start grabbing dudes, searching real quick, then stuffing them in the nearest car, then jumping back into the fray because we were fighting with them too. So it all dies down and immediately we get a call. I forget what it was, but we got a go lights and sirens to it. I run to my car, nobody in it. Sweet, I get to go. So I jump in my car and I'm hauling ass lights and siren to this new call. For a few minutes, apexing turns it's 2 AM and foggy, not really anyone on the roads. Remember that 2 AM and foggy? So I'm rolling down this street in the fog with my lights and siren, and I see an object with a hoodie on its head slowly slide up behind me in my rear view. The jail's that way. Were you taking me? I was going fairly fast on a straightaway, and I nearly effing stacked it up into a pole when I was scared shitless. I jerked the wheel and a little pee came out. I do admit, I pulled over and had to pace a few mins outside the car to calm down. So the guy was stuffed into my car by some other officer, and because he was drunk, he just laid down on the floorboard, put his hoodie on, and passed out. I woke him up by yanking and banking and slamming him into the doors of the car. Lol. I took him back to the club and no officer claimed him. So I just took the dude home and we laughed about it the whole way. I told him I totally peed. My brother is a Detroit cop. Told me this one. They get a call from someone reporting their car was stolen. They show up and it turns out someone had already stolen the tires off the car. Then a different group stole the actual car. They pushed it 2 blocks without tires and left perfect grooves in the street all the way to their garage. Their defense was, but we didn't steal the tires. Detroit, when we rob you, we really rob you. My boyfriend is a police officer. Last week he pulled over a drunk driver who ended up speeding off. Car chase back to his house and drunk guy tells him, I got home, it's okay, you can go now. Drunk guy continues arguing and it's 3 AM. So his family wakes up and his son steps out to the front porch and yells, damn it dad you freaking idiot, we told you to stop doing this. GTA safe house rules. Not a cop but a corrections officer. 2 inmates got into a fight in a hallway. I was the closest to them and only saw the start of the fight out of the corner of my eye. In my report I wrote that I saw the 2 inmates fall to the ground with name on top of other inmate. Later, the hearing sergeant was reading the report to one of the inmates so they could dispute any facts in the report they felt were untrue or biased. He asked the inmate if they wanted to dispute any facts in my report. The inmate said, yeah, we didn't fall to the ground. I grabbed the other inmate and slammed his ass on the floor. What would have been a simple fighting charge turned into an assault charge. Sir, can I see your driver's license? I don't have one. Then why were you driving? I wasn't. I was traveling. My grandpa was a cop. He told me a story about how when he was still in uniform filling up his squad car, someone tried to rob him with a knife. Needless to say that didn't work out for him. Edit. Some people were a bit confused. My grandpa just pulled his gun and arrested the man. Sorry for the confusion. Apparently it went something like this. Robber, give me your wallet. Grandpa, what? Robber, give me your wallet. Grandpa, are you sure you want to do that? Robber, yeah, now hand it over. Grandpa, okay. Pulls gun out. You're under arrest. Robber, shocked face. Arrested a guy for shooting heroin in the parents' room of a shopping center. Walked in while he had the needle in his arm. We stare at each other for a bit. Then he comes out with, I'm a diabetic. I cuff him. Leave my partner to do the search while I read caution and rights. Old mate is not diabetic and we know this because he's got 87 prior convictions for use, possession, trafficking drugs. I go through the usual you do not have to say or do anything spiel. Then say, do you understand these rights? He's totally cooked on heroin at this point, and he just looks at me and goes, you want to get dinner tonight? It's not the worst response I've had to caution and rights, though. Edit. I had no idea this would gain the amount of comments it did. There seems to be loads of questions in the replies, so if anyone has any for me feel free to DM me and I'll answer them. For clarification, I'm in Australia, hence differences in the legal system. Not a cop, but I used to read a lot of police reports at my old job. My favorite was a woman who refused a breathalyzer by telling the cop, I won't blow on that, but I'll blow on your D. I stopped someone who was in the area of a load of theft from motor vehicles. After a bit of questioning, I carried out a search and found numerous wallets, phones, etc. He claimed that all of the cards were his, all 13 different identities. To be fair, he stuck to his story. He carried it all the way to court, going not guilty. Okay then, Mr. Jones, you are under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Mr. Fletcher, you are also under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Mrs. Rodriguez, you are under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Motor vehicle stop. License and registration please. Proceeds to lean over to the passenger seat, scoop up a handful of low mine, and tries to put it in the officer's hand. He was locked up for OUI 4th offense. To this day I still wonder if he thought he was passing his correct paperwork, or if the Chinese food was some sort of peace offering. Responded to an apartment complex for a kid eating a corn dog and was stuck on the roof. The FD arrives and gets the kid off the roof. I told the kids why he was eating a corn dog on the roof. His answer was, because I threw it up there. His look of duh left me speechless. Dispatcher had a guy call in and tell us that he's currently violating the protective order by being with his ex who is pregnant by him. Wants us to call the judge and get it dismissed so they can go inside the restaurant and eat. Officer is standing next to my partner who answered the call and asks the guys where he is so we can send the judge to him. Guy hangs up. Woman is waiting for her DUI trial in the courtroom. The lawyers and judge are milling around and getting their paperwork in order. Trial starts in 10-15 minutes. The prosecuting attorney asks her if she wants to take the plea deal one last time. She refuses and goes on about how this is unconstitutional and the police and courts are corrupt and how is she going to take her kid to school, blah blah blah. She is starting to cause a bit of scene, yelling, acting like a child, just being generally annoying. Someone in the room gets a whiff of alcohol. She is out on bond, so she can basically be given a PBT at any time for any reason. Judge orders one on her. She registers a 0.226 in court. This woman who is on trial for DUI had the audacity to drive to court drunk and then moan and groan about how she isn't being treated fairly and we're all corrupt and this is unconstitutional. Not only that, but it explicitly states in your bond conditions that you cannot consume alcohol. So I cuff her and bring her to the jail. She's still running her mouth during the walkover. I had nothing to say. I had absolutely zero sympathy for her. I could barely hold in my laughter on the walkover to the jail. In a city near to me, a guy murdered a woman, put her body in a large garment bag, and left her in a vacant lot. Unfortunately for him, he forgot to take the tags with his name and address off the bag from a recent flight. A would-be bank robber wrote his hold-up note and put it into his wallet. He got rattled at the bank and accidentally left his driver's license on the counter when he handed the note to a teller. A third crook just took on more than he could handle and apparently didn't watch the time. He had a long history of grand theft auto and was hospitalized after being badly beaten in the parking lot of a sports area after a lacrosse game. The guy swore up and down that he had no idea why anyone would assault him there. Dad's a detective. Had a murder case where a dog walker found a severed head in a park. Over the rest of the morning they found a full set of chopped up body parts around that park. A trail of blood led from each part and they followed them all the way back to a nearby house, in through the door and up the stairs, to a room covered in blood, with a guy asleep in a bed. Turns out this guy had got drunk with a friend, had an argument, killed him, chopped him up, and hid his body parts in the park, before passing out back at the house. Police caught him literally red-handed. Apparently he was really confused how they got him so quickly. So my personal favorite was when a bloke on a motorbike swerved in front of our squad car and crashed. We hopped out, picked the bike up off him. It was penning his leg and asked, "You alright, mate?" To which he replied, "Of course I'm alright, what do you mean?" "Well, you just fell off your bike, mate." "No, I didn't." He just kept insisting that there was no way he could have crashed and it must have been someone else. Edit. For those concerned, it was a head injury. He did blow a .17 when tested, so we chalked it up to that. Stopped a lady for speeding 15 miles per hour over the limit. I asked what a reason could be for going so fast. She said, "I live here. You can't give me a speeding ticket. I live just down the street. I live here. This is unbelievable. I live here." I was pulled over for doing 65 miles per hour in a 30. Honestly didn't realize it. I had just left my dad's new house, new area, and it was like 11 PM. Cop asked me why I was going so fast. I said, "I honestly have no excuse. I missed the speed limit signs, I guess, and I was let go with a warning." Not a police officer, but a witness to a crime, who had to give evidence in court. Basically witnessed a girl crashing her car and barrel rolling it into a tree. She was clearly drunk. The fireman arrived after 10 minutes. Her car had leaked petrol everywhere. Then her husband shows up, on foot, and tries to calm her down, followed by her mother in a car and the police. She tried to claim that she wasn't the one driving, even though no one else had been in the car. In court, a year later, she said her mother had been driving, the one who showed up in her own car 10 minutes after the crash. She also punched an officer in the face and was pepper sprayed, but that's a whole other story. Needless to say, she was found guilty. Not a cop, but rode along frequently as part of a training program. The dumbest thing I saw someone do involved one of those dog crates that you can carry, like for a small dog, such as a chihuahua. This woman was having a dispute with some people who had their dog in one of those carry kennels sitting on the ground. There were 3 officers at the scene. The woman was given a ticket and tossed it on the ground. She was told, "Pick that up, or you will be arrested for littering." When she picked it up, she kicked the dog kennel hard enough to make it barrel roll. She was immediately and aggressively taken into custody and charged with animal cruelty. Edit. Since this gained some popularity, let's hate this woman, because she was the most annoying person I have ever interacted with. She called 911 to say that there were people she didn't know squatting in her garage apartment, and they had a knife. We got there and the squatters had tons of regular people belongings that did not match the profile of squatters. Additionally, all of their belongings were strewn along the ground, outside in the alleyway. They had texts proving that they had been renting from her, and they said that they were 2 days late on rent. She went crazy and threw all of their stuff outside. The knife that they supposedly had was one of their steak knives that had come out of a shelf that she dumped in the alley. She had also allegedly shoved one of them. By the time we had sorted this all out, the woman had vanished. The officer told them to go ahead and put their stuff back inside and that she'd have to evict them. At this point they didn't want to press any charges, so we just left to drive around and told them to call back if they had more problems. They called back within 10 minutes. She'd come back and shoved one of them, throwing another temper tantrum. The ticket she got was for assault by contact, and the rest is history. Tossed the ticket on the ground, kicked their dog, and got taken to jail. The best part was that the whole ride to jail, she was continuing her tantrum, asking how she was going to jail when she called the police and she didn't do anything wrong. No matter how many times she said that she didn't do anything wrong, or that she shouldn't go to jail, though, that's exactly where she ended up. Copied mine from a previous similar thread. In law enforcement but not a regular cop. Middle of search warrant. Looking for a bloke. Lots of drug convictions in the past. Found a still burning blunt in the ashtray in the living room. But no sign of the guy in the house. I am 99% sure he is in the roof cavity. I announced to my partner, "I think he is up there. Should we look?" Suddenly the ceiling starts talking. Hear the softest. No. Hey. Shit. Can they hear me? Nah. It's all good. So my partner said, "Nah man. I didn't hear that guy say we shouldn't look up there." Ceiling replies with, "Sweet. I knew they wouldn't find me." Needless to say, we looked and pulled a very stoned guy out from under the insulation bass. Side note, they make you itchy AF. So be careful choosing your hiding spots when you're stoned. There are so many to choose from, but one sticks out. Dude decides that his dildo no longer is doing the trick by itself, so he uses his creative liberty to construct an apparatus to enhance his experience. He takes his once boring Olay dildo and bolts it in an upright position on the top of his nightstand to create the Megatron of sex toys. Unfortunately for him and us, he found himself unable to disengage from his new toy. Evidently, the once pleasurable toy was now a torture device, because his screams of agony were alarming loud enough to get the attention of his neighbor, who called 911. After 10 minutes of unsuccessful attempts by police and EMS to remove homeboy from his device, we ultimately had to unbolt the toy from the nightstand and transport him to the hospital with the toy still intact. Friend who is an officer told me this one a little bit ago. He was driving near where unknown car thief lived, so he stops by SUV in the driveway with no tags, walks up, runs the VIN, stolen. Now the property had a house on it, and then out back, a small mother-in-law suite where said thief lived. Officer walks out back, knocks, and then hears a car door. Officer starts running, engine starts, and yup, thief is driving away in the stolen SUV. Officer knows where he ditches stolen cars at. so has an officer stake out that area. Sure enough, 2 hours later the SUV rolls up with a Jeep following it. SUV driver wipes down the dash, wipes down the outside door handle, and gets in the Jeep. Officer pulls them over and arrests them both. Why both? The Jeep is stolen. Officer runs her license. Send another officer to her address and guess what? She had a stolen car at her place. 3 stolen cars recovered. 2 people in jail. All because one officer decided to stop by a thief's last address. I'm not a police officer, but I called the cops on my roommate in college because she tried to attack me and she wouldn't cooperate with the cops, so she got cuffed and was screaming about how she was gonna beat my ass. They were like, yeah, you were gonna beat her ass? And she was agreeing. Mayo. In court later, the judge asked her, so you think it's okay to beat someone's ass if they turn your TV off when you're not there? And she nodded and said, yes I do, and the judge just deep sighed. My Bill is a cop in a small town. Pulled a car over one night, recognized the kid, smelled weed inside the car, and said, give me the weed and I won't search your car, won't give you a ticket, and you can be on your way. Kid fights him, says he doesn't know what that smell is, there's no weed, and how can I trust that you won't take me to the station if I give it to you? Bill promises again that if he hands him the weed, he will let him go. No questions asked. Kid keeps being a moron. Bill searches the car and finds many more drugs hidden all over, as well as weed. Bill says, alright, let's go to the station. Kid gets upset and says, you said you weren't going to do this. See, I couldn't trust you. I groan and laugh every time I think of that. What a dummy. I was police at the time. In the middle of the night my partner and I found the car in a cemetery. Stolen cars were dumped there regularly. The car had its windows down and it had only recently been left there. It was still warm to touch. It didn't flag up as stolen, and through the window I could see a meth pipe in plain view. That gives us the ability to search the car. Inside we find a bunch of meth pipes, 3.5 grams of meth, a small amount of cannabis and a handgun. There was also a tablet phone that was unlocked, and while we were searching the car, the tablet kept on receiving messages from people trying to score meth. I had a quick look through the phone and was able to figure out that the owner of the car had come out from the city. I worked rurally at the time to make a score from one of the local gangs, but the gang didn't want her turning up, so arranged to meet her at the cemetery and conduct business somewhere else. I leave a business card under the wipers, not my card but the station's, and on the back I wrote that she, the owner of the car, should come down to the station if she wants to get her stuff back, and sure enough she did. At 9 the next morning, methed out, looking for her drugs and gun. A buddy of mine was a campus PD officer back in college. I was convinced I could beat the sobriety test after a 6-pack, so I had him take me through it. I walked the line, touched my nose and hopped on one foot. Then he asked me to say the alphabet backwards. I told him I couldn't do that sober. He said that sentence is probable cause for a blood test. That's how I learned that they aren't just testing your motor skills. Not my story, but my police officer friend's. He had gone in to arrest someone for dealing drugs. He was in full uniform, whilst someone else had already been in there, undercover. The drug dealer looks at the undercover police officer and says, "You're undercover." "Yes." "Well done." He looks at my uniformed friend and says, "You're undercover too." He was not. Then he looks at someone else, not a police officer, and says, "And you?" Guy responds with, "How am I an undercover police officer? I just bought drugs off of you." And that's how they made an unexpected arrest at that raid. So we are partying at one of our friends' place, and cops stop by to check what's with all the commotion. I know that because they told me that there weren't any complaints or anything. So, I am dealing with the cops, when my friend, who is high AF, decides to join in. He starts speaking in our native tongue, which the cops don't understand. Anyhow, one of the cops raises his right hand and waves 3 fingers in front of my friend's face, asking him, "How many fingers are these?" To which my friend replies, still in our native language, "Thankfully. Why do you drink so much that you are even unable to count your own fingers, sir?" Second-hand story. As I was the victim of burglary, but heard this from the police officer. I saw the guy breaking into my place on a security camera and called them. They managed to arrest the guy while he was still inside, packing up my stuff. He was pretty cocky to the police, as that he thought that, as he hadn't actually left with his bag of swag, my stuff, that he hadn't committed a crime yet. All he did was broke a window. Not a police officer, but my father was a 911 dispatch operator. My dad was working one night, and he gets a call from a man who is obviously drunk. Dad, 911, what is your emergency? Drunk? Yeah. I think I just heard a red car crash. Dad, you heard a red car crash? Drunk? Yeah. Dad, okay. Police are on their way. Click. My dad finds out later that this dude was driving drunk and crashed his car not far from his house. Guy decides to get out of his car, stumble home, and dial 911 to report the fact that he heard a car crash. In his drunken mind, he figured he'd report the crash as someone who heard it, and he'd get off somehow. But he had to specify the color, because apparently a red car crashing sounds are different than a blue car crashing.